Hello guys, so we are now in Nassau in Bahamas and we are here with Michael Cohn, who is CEO of Fantom. It's a layer 1 blockchain solution which tries to make transactions more scalable and accelerate the speed of the transactions. Nice to meet you here, Michael.
Yeah, great to meet you, Anna. Thanks so much for the opportunity to do this in-person interview.
Yeah, so can you tell us how did you get into crypto vault? From what did you start? Which year was it?
So I originally heard about Bitcoin back in 2012, and I started playing around with Bitcoin a bit and purchasing some in 2013. But how I really got much more involved and interested in the space was about 2015, 2016, because a friend of mine at University of Sydney, where I studied finance and IT, was telling me about Ethereum, and he was a big Ethereum bull, and he said, and there were actually a couple of them on campus, and he was talking about how you could build smart contracts, how you can code different applications in them, and about how it was a lot more than just a payment system or store of value, which Bitcoin was advertised as. And so I ended up experimenting with smart contracts and playing around with them, and I got quite interested in how it all worked. And fortunately for myself, as part of my final year honors thesis and major software project, there was a professor who's joined our team recently actually to lead our middleware development efforts, called Professor Bernard Schultz, who wanted to do a whole bunch of research into virtual machines and how to detect vulnerabilities in smart contracts. So I spent a couple of years working with him on that sort of software, and that gave me a really good technical understanding of how smart contracts actually execute, and gave me a bit more of an academic background. And then while I was doing that research, and also a bit afterwards, I was the first full-time engineer for a blockchain development software firm called Block 8, which worked on a few well-known projects in the space. And then afterwards, I launched at the end of 2017 a cryptocurrency fund out of Australia with a few people from traditional finance, and that's kind of how I got into Fantom, because we were managing people's money and also advising a couple of ICOs, and one of them was Fantom at the time, and so that's how it kind of began.
And what did excite you about Fantom? Why did you decide to join the team?
So Fantom originally was a project out of Korea, and there were a bunch of postdoctoral people and a couple of associate professors that were saying that they had found a way of processing transactions in a much more faster, cheaper, efficient manner than say Ethereum, while still maintaining smart contract compatibility. So they advertised that they'd found a way of processing transactions what we call asynchronously. That is processing multiple transactions simultaneously across the network while still achieving consensus. And so for us, that was very attractive because they had a very strong background, at least on paper. And back then, in 2017, 2018, this was kind of the era of the ICO and kind of the tailwind of the ICO when the project started in February/March of 2018. And so, having a strong team, purporting to have solved the technology, and being a Korean project was seen as quite attractive, and the project ended up raising a bit over $40 million US. The problem is that the technology they advertised to us wasn't true in the end. So we had to kind of rebuild the team and hire developers to start working on the technology, and the technology that we have today was built by some of the developers that are still with us to this very day. So I kind of became, I like to say, the accidental CEO. It was never really my intention to keep working on Fantom. It was my intention to keep working at the fund that we had set up and to advertise, advise Fantom from time to time. On the legals and some of the technicals, but I ended up getting a lot more involved because of how the situation played out.
And do you still run that fund, or did you stop with
No, I stopped running the fund basically beginning of 2019. So that fund, it was called Token Capital Management. It's now a much bigger company now of I think around 40 or so people, called Cronje. I think they're based in Singapore and also Sydney as well, and a few other countries. So it's a lot bigger than when I joined, which was about 4 people to begin with. So they've done quite well now. But and I have friendly relations with them. I left on very good terms. I left because I wanted to, and I was passionate about working at Fantom, and it wouldn't have been good for me to keep working at Fantom and keep working at the fund and having 2 jobs. So That's basically what happened.
And now you moved to Bahamas. Can you tell about your decision? Why did you decide so, and how do you see crypto ecosystem growing here?
Yeah, so I moved to Bahamas for like a number of reasons. So one of them is definitely about like lifestyle. So I like swimming. I like going in the water a lot. That's what I try to do. Very often on like a daily basis. It's also like good for business as well, because Bahamas is becoming like one of these like big crypto hubs in the space. Along with a few other jurisdictions like the UAE, and I think FTX has brought a lot of attention to the country, and I know some people who are considering and people who are moving here. So it's just like a very like business-friendly environment. So there's like a whole number of reasons, why I moved here, and it's it's been a great experience. I mean, as it is like moving to any country, there are a lot of things that I really like. There's some things that I don't particularly like. But that's just because obviously like I didn't grow up here and I have like a different background. But on the whole, it's been like a very positive experience, and I really like this place.
Yeah, it's a great place to be. And Fantom as well cooperates with different governments. Like there were a lot of news last year about cooperation with Uzbekistan, Afghanistan governments. Do you plan to do anything with Bahrain government too?
Yeah, we're thinking about like launching kind of like a bit of like an educational platform. We're being involved in some like educational programs here in the Bahamas. The discussions are like ongoing. I don't want to like disclose anything that's like maybe a bit confidential, but yeah, we're definitely looking to do some things here, because again, like the government is very like business friendly. The people here are like very nice. It's quite a good place to live, and so we also want to give back in the to the community, and not just like live here.
And can you tell us something more about your previous partnerships with the governments, how it's going, what's the progress?
So with regards to like other governments out there, as people are aware, like we did some work quite successfully with the previous government of Afghanistan. So we did roll out certification of like a few tens of thousands of drugs across Kabul, and we were like poised to kind of expand that more nationwide across the different provinces. Unfortunately, as people are very well aware, last year the government changed. We have obviously like no intention of doing business with the new government in any way whatsoever. So our activities in Afghanistan like had to abruptly end, and it happened like really fast actually. In terms of like other government programs, look, we're talking to like a variety of different governments. There are probably going to be some announcements coming out soon, but the issue with working with governments is that usually they're quite slow and there's a lot of procedures to go through. But hopefully we can like take the experience that we learned in Afghanistan and the technology that we've developed that belongs to the Fantom Foundation and redeploy that elsewhere, for supply chain management, plus a few other ideas that we have in mind as well. So there are a number of things that we are working on, and people need to stay tuned for that.
And as well, currently there are different other layer 1, layer 2 solutions, like there are other trending chains like Avalanche, Solana, NEA protocol, Polygon, Arbitrum. Can you tell about the advantages of Fantom in comparison to all other chains?
Yeah, so I think the big key difference between Fantom is that we process transactions asynchronously. And what I mean by that is that you can process transactions you can process multiple transactions simultaneously. So that dramatically increases your throughput. And also because you need like just over two-thirds of the total validating power on the network in order to confirm a transaction, it means that once you reach that threshold and the block gets appended to the chain, transactions are finalized. So the finality is deterministic. It's not based on probabilities. It's not based on the longest chain rule or anything like that. And so I think we've built like a very strong core technology, and you can see that in kind of the performance of the network, the fact that the throughput is much higher than like other chains, and also the fact that the fees are lower, and most importantly of all, that the chain is fault tolerant. It never goes offline. There's never a reorg. There's no possibility of a fork occurring because of how the technology is developed. And just over a year now, we haven't had any downtime. We haven't had like a single millisecond of downtime. It's always been consistently up, and there are a lot of like improvements that we're going to make to the underlying technology. And I think the key thing is that what we've noticed is that maybe surprisingly, consensus for us is not really the bottleneck. Consensus is actually very fast. The bottleneck for us has to do with like other aspects of the technology. So for example, like the synchronization times between the nodes, for example, the amount of like import and output data that's going to and from the nodes, and most importantly of all, the slowness of the Ethereum virtual machine, because it's very, very slow to process, execute transactions with the EVM. And in our experimentation, we've seen that we can get like throughput like 15 to 20 times higher without using the EVM, but obviously we want smart contract compatibility. So, reworking the EVM with a new virtual machine is something that is really important for us. And so, we're tackling these problems one at a time. We've just got an upgrade that's been launched today called SnapSync, which allows you to synchronize nodes much faster between one another on the network. So that will go a long way in like improving the performance of the network. So we know what the problems are, and we believe we know the solutions to these problems, and so the network should be a lot more scalable than it is even today.
And as well, there was the news about departure of Cronje, your technical advisor, and Anton now, from all the projects in crypto space, and specifically from Fantom too, and like the price immediately dropped quite a lot, and like a lot of people stopped believing in the future of the project. Can you comment on the situation?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think I kind of addressed this question before, like on multiple different interviews. So it's going to be a bit of a repeat of what I said before. But on one Monday morning, Andre messaged me and said that he didn't want to be involved anymore in the crypto space, and we kind of had a conversation about the reasons why. And I fully understood what he said at the time. But more recently, he's come out a bit like publicly, like on one of the podcasts. I think it's called like Delphi Digital, and he was talking about how he still advises us from time to time. So he does still talk to us a lot, and work with us in the background and provide like a lot of support, like he's always done in the past. I think the way that he departed, the tweet that Anton put out there, was maybe not necessarily like the best worded tweet, or the tweet that necessarily like Andre would like to have put out there. But it happened, and we had to deal with it. It was kind of like weird. People were messaging me and saying like, "Oh, it's like Fantom being shut down." I'm like, "What do you mean? This is like crazy. Like, how can one person just like shut down the network? It doesn't make sense." I mean, the network is run by a community of like thousands of people, and all of these validator nodes and different kind of nodes. And so I had to kind of like tell people that just like didn't make sense. And other people, there were a lot of myths. Like a lot of people were saying like, "Oh, you've lost your like core developer. What are you going to do about the technology?" And it's like, well, Andre hasn't actually been. Andre played like a good role in the technology, but he hasn't been involved in the underlying technology, since 2019. And if you go to the GitHub and you look at who's actually been committing to the Go-Opera repository, you'll see that Andre hasn't committed, for like years. And so I just like went out there and just basically just told people the truth. A lot of myths that were out there about like, Andre, a lot of myths about the foundation, and just told people, basically what the truth is, and that, the team is 100% there, working, committed. There's not been a single project that I know of that has said, "Oh, we're not deploying on Fantom now because of Andre," or "We're not deploying on Fantom now," or we're going to like be leaving Fantom because like Andre is like at least like no longer publicly involved. And so, the community has kept growing. The projects have kept growing. You can see that in the number of projects that are being continuously deployed on Fantom, as like announced on Twitter. You can see the wallet growth has still continued to go up a lot, even though maybe like the market conditions or crypto as a whole have not been that good due to like many economic conditions and things that are happening around the world. But yeah, we're continuing strong, and we're going to keep working, and we have a lot of exciting technical and also non-technical upgrades coming along.
And I wonder, what was the reason that Andre Cronje decided to departure completely from crypto space publicly?
Look, he kind of described about it in like a blog post that he wrote, some interviews that he's done. I just leave it there. I've had private conversations with him. I'm sure other people have had as well. I'm not going to like really disclose those, but you can see what he has said and written publicly, and you can kind of like draw your own conclusions from there, I guess.
Okay. And can you tell more about the current development of Fantom ecosystem? You have a 335 million ecosystem fund. What type of projects are interesting for Fantom, and etc.?
Yeah, so we originally announced like an incentive program back in September last year. Excuse me. But we found out that the incentive program was not working very well for a number of reasons. I mean, it was supposed to be based on like objective metrics, i.e. TVL with DeFi, and that just caused a number of issues because we did have like a few projects kind of like, shall we say, game the system and gain a lot of FTM with projects that necessarily were not the most honest, I'll just say. So we've had to rejig that program to launch on Gitcoin, and I know for Gitcoin grants, there's a lot more of community participation, which is exactly what we want. So people just don't think it's the foundation that's picking winners and losers with the reserves that we have. That being said, we're not sure how like the Gitcoin grant will actually play out. The first one begins next month in June. And depending on how that goes, we may adjust the program accordingly. And what we're really pushing for as well is for Gitcoin to deploy on Fantom, because right now the system is on Ethereum. We want it to be deployed on Fantom, and I think when it's deployed on Fantom eventually, it'll be a lot more powerful system. So with the Gitcoin grant, it's really open to like what the community wants. I mean, what we see right now in crypto is that people are looking for projects that are like really sophisticated in the DeFi or NFT space, and that are going to get like a lot of attraction and a lot of like backing for it. And so if people want to find particular projects in that space or even outside of that space, then the foundation will fund that a lot. And with the first Gitcoin grant round, it's about like 3 million FTM, which is quite a lot of money. So that's how the new incentive program is essentially going to be working.
Yes, interesting. And as well, now a lot of crypto companies have different partnerships with sports team and specifically with Formula One, and Fantom is not exclusion, and Fantom cooperates with Pierre, and as well I read the news that recently he launched his NFTs on Fantom. Can you tell more about this?
Yeah, so the Pierre Gasly AlphaTauri sponsorship has been a great sponsorship, and I really have to thank our big community member Harry Ye for organizing that sponsorship. And I think the interesting thing about the sponsorship with AlphaTauri is that, in particular with Pierre Gasly, for him, it's not just like another sponsor. I've talked to him before quite a bit, and he like really is interested in blockchain. He is interested in the underlying technology. He's interested in the potential, and in particular, he's interested in like what Fantom can do in the blockchain space. So he really is like passionate about Fantom and about the Fantom ecosystem and about blockchain in general. With this NFT launch, we had a very successful launch back in October. This is like a second iteration of a launch. The launch is being done with a good partner of ours called Infinity NFTs, and so they're the ones that are conducting it. And yeah, if you check out the sale, there's like a few auctions going on where you can earn some like F1 memorabilia that belongs like to Pierre Gasly that is given to the community, and it comes with a whole bunch of like different experiences like one-on-one meetings and VIP treatments and that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean the NFT sale I think is quite interesting, and I really like it, and I really like the fact that Pierre and also Sakoda as well is very passionate about the space.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. And do you have yourself any NFTs?
Yeah, I do. I have a few NFTs. I don't play around with NFTs too much, to be honest. Although I have like built some like NFT software, and I kind of know how it works. But kind of like my main focus has really been like working at Fantom and pushing out like a lot of technical updates, working with the team, and just doing like I guess the stuff that the CEO has done, like a lot of administrative stuff and other things behind the scenes that maybe are not the most exciting, but like obviously need to be done.
And which coins besides Fantom do you have in your portfolio?
I don't really like give investment advice here. I just say that I own some like Bitcoin and Ethereum and a number of other coins. Own some stable coins. I just leave it at that. And of course, like I own some like FTM.
And are you deep into DeFi? Do you do like yield farming or DeFi staking?
Yeah, I do like staking, DeFi. I'm not gonna tell people like what pools I use and what I don't want to be seen as giving investment advice or me advising people what they should or shouldn't do. But yeah, I participate on the DeFi ecosystem. In particular on the Fantom ecosystem, I play around with it a lot. I see what projects have been launched there, and I see and I can feedback to the projects about like the user experience, like what's good and what's maybe needs some improvement. So I do that on a regular basis. I play around with a lot of the applications that are on Fantom, both DeFi and NFT.
And how do you see the development of DeFi overall?
I think it's going to continue. I think it's one of the big use cases, of crypto. I think what kind of distinguishes us like crypto now from like back in say 2017, 2018, is that really like, the main reason why people were using crypto back then, or in particular Ethereum, were just to like conduct and participate in these initial coin offerings, ICOs, right? And I think it's evolved to be a lot more than that. It's now like actual utility, like we're related to like DeFi, like the fact that you can remove like middlemen from the ecosystem and replace that with a smart contract that, if coded correctly, has like all the rules in there, is completely transparent, and you can see all the transactions going in and out. I think it's like a huge like value add to the community, and I think that's something that's going to continue in the long run. And also with NFTs, people being able to own actually own their own data, be able to trade that, and to prove ownership of it on a transparent chain, I think is like a huge value as well. So we're starting to see like actual utility in blockchain space. We're not just seeing improvements in underlying technology. We're not just seeing like a phenomenon that will come and go. We're seeing something that is like really, in my opinion, long-term sustainable. And I think there will be a lot more use cases for blockchains coming out. And I think in the very long term that blockchain technology will be used as much as the internet is used. I see no reason why that can't be the case in the end. It may take years for that to be achieved, just like it took years for the early internet to be as big as it is now. But I think we'll get there in the end.
Yeah, that's true. And can you share some more upcoming plans for the development for Fantom?
Yeah, sure. So, as I mentioned on this interview, there's like kind of like 3 technical challenges that we're addressing right now. We're addressing like synchronization speeds between nodes. We're addressing the amount of like input and outputs that are going in between the nodes, and which includes validator nodes and read-only or like API nodes or RPC nodes, and also improving the speed and the execution of the smart contracts by improving the smart contract execution engine. So right now, we've just implemented a new upgrade called SnapSync, which helps out deal with the synchronization times. We're also working on using a different database to process transactions. It's called PebbleDB, making modifications for that. There are like a few technical issues with it right now that we've identified. So we've deployed it on some of our API nodes in mainnet. On the whole, it's worked really, really well. It's reduced inputs and outputs by like a factor of about 90% so far in our testing. But there are a few other like problems we need to solve before we can push that to like other nodes in the community. So that will go a long way to making the network scalable. And the third thing is right now, we've onboarded a new middleware team. So we've onboarded my old professor, Professor Bernard Schultz from the University of Sydney, who has like decades of experience in virtual machine development and a few years also in blockchain development. So he joined on the 1st of May, and so I'm working with him on a roadmap on how to like improve the middleware technology and solving the particular problems that we've identified. And there's also at least 2 other people and probably 3 people that Bernard's used to work with before who understand virtual machine and programming languages that will be joining in the next couple of months. So hopefully it will be a team of 4 that will work specifically to solve these problems. It'll be a multi-year effort, but the performance improvements will be seen immediate on each like component that's replaced. So for example, like replacing like the way that reads and writes are done for the middleware, and then replacing the virtual machine, and replacing like the GEF client and all these like different components to the middleware stack, you'll start to see immediate performance improvements. So it won't be like, oh, you got to wait 5 years and see a big change. Maybe you only have to wait like a few months to see like another iteration be pushed to the mainnet and see the benefits of it. So those are kind of the technical challenges that we're working on like right now for the immediate future.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Good luck with the development, and thank you for such interesting conversation.
No worries. Like again, thank you so much for the opportunity. Yeah.